The topic of my talk today is that future oversight is a key crux in AI safety. I'm using oversight in a very general sense, so I'm not speaking specifically about scalable oversight. This is one of the main things that my team thinks about at UK AISI. I want to ask everybody in this room to consider this question. Is AI alignment a hard, unsolved problem? If you don't think much about alignment, then think about control. Do you think controlling future AI systems will be possible, easy, doable? And think about why. One crux that I think many people in the room have is that they think AI alignment or AI control is something that will be enabled by the amount of oversight we have of these systems. So when they do things that we don't like, we see that. When they do things for reasons we don't like, we can debug that. When training doesn't work the way we want it to, we have ways of understanding that. And I think that currently there's a view among many people in the community that for the systems we have today, this is by and large quite possible. And I think that's great. And I think the question is, do we expect that to continue? So a useful frame that my team has been using is loss of monitorability. It's not a perfect framing, and I think there are parts of it that I'm not entirely sure are true. So the three components are that we can confidently assess and mitigate risks from current AI systems. I know monitorability today is not perfect, but we seem to be okay, or various people seem to be okay with continuing what we're currently doing, and they seem to be comfortable deploying these models in a lot of contexts. Now, there's many things that are true about systems today. I like to call these properties. I think exactly what is true about systems today, whether it's the systems themselves or the way we're deploying them or the mitigations, that's maybe another leaky part of this abstraction. But there are things that are true about models today that make this possible. And then the main intuition here is that these things might change or degrade. Obviously, a lot of people in this room have thought about chain of thought monitoring, whether neuralese might result in us not being able to monitor the chains of thoughts of these systems. And I think to the extent that there are many properties today that might matter, I'm quite interested in enumerating those and understanding them. So I think my team has been thinking about this, and we've just decided, well, like let's attempt to get the best possible strategic overview of all of the possible pathways to current systems being harder to oversee. So can we enumerate the oversight relevant properties of current models? Can we think about all of the mechanisms by which these properties might deteriorate or change? And can we understand what we might do about that? So we've got a couple of ways of trying to answer these questions. One of the main ones is doing a very comprehensive literature review. We've interviewed many people from many different labs and inside UK AISI to ask them these questions, very much in an open-ended fashion, not saying that they have to opine on specific questions, but asking them what are the kinds of ideas that come to mind. And just thinking about it a lot. So in the course of this work, so this work is ongoing, and I apologize, that means I will not be able to share the high-level findings in quite as much detail as I would like. But in the course of doing this, I think we've noticed that it's easier to talk about domains. So we have like the actions of models, the chain of thought, currently text, but maybe that might be specific activations in the future, latent representations for current models, the way these systems store and share memory. Currently, there's a lot of text being used here, but that might not always be the case. Incident reproducibility was one that I wasn't expecting to come up as frequently as it did. This is not necessarily a property of the system itself so much as the deployment environment, but like having systems where the environments in which we're deploying them are such that when there are issues, we can go and debug this. This is the thing that I think could degrade. You can imagine a world in which we're deploying AI systems in lots of contexts where we can't do this. We can't debug. If things go wrong, we don't know what happened. Maybe we don't even know which model it was. So that's a property that affects our ability to oversee these models. And training. I think training, the fact that we can train models today that maybe they can't gradient hack, that we can do elicitation without training or honesty training, how far that generalizes. There are underlying properties of current systems that maybe would shift in the future. And so understanding those, I think, is quite important. So specifically, I thought I'd go deep on chain of thought monitorability. I think there I don't want to claim that there is consensus, but we heard from a lot of people that it's very, very useful, probably the most useful thing we have today for monitoring AI systems. There are a number of people who highlighted that you can't really convince people of very concerning things with chain of thought monitorability because you can get things like false positives. The chain of thought is not always faithful. So even this thing that we think is like the best, most valuable property of current systems, it's not clear that it really has many of the properties we would want it to have. We can't say quite as many things about it as we want to. Some people think that we're going to lose this, and that future systems are not going to reason in chain of thought, and that this is inevitable. Some people think that's urgent. Some people don't think it's urgent. I would say the fraction of people that we spoke to who seem to be optimistic about how this is going to go was fairly low, and the sense I got from them that it was more the necessity to reason in chain of thought is almost certainly going to go away, and it doesn't really seem like that many people are disagreeing with that. The propensity to verbalize some amount of chain of thought, I think, was something that some people thought might hang around for quite a while and be quite useful. The mechanisms, I wish I could talk at more length about this in my original draft. I had many more slides on this, but I'll quickly share some of the ideas here. So sudden architectural changes are like clearly the one that gives most people anxiety. The question here is like whether or not this is going to be SOTA, whether or not that's going to be just like you have to do that because other companies are going to do that and you need to compete on that. Additionally, this idea of, well, let's not apply gradient pressure to the chain of thought. Because outside of Frontier Labs, we don't know many of the details about how the training is occurring there. I think there's a reasonable amount of skepticism where people think, can we really be sure that we're not training against the chain of thought? There are a number of mechanisms, especially if in our lit review that came out, that suggested you might not think you're training against the chain of thought, but you might actually be doing so. And I think one of these is outcome-based supervision spillover. Is a great paper by Alex Turner on the topic. So the ideas I'm sharing here are a little bit informed by the survey, but they're a lot from our own thinking. I think there are a lot of avenues to dealing with possible degradation of oversight. In terms of technical approaches, there are a lot of specific ideas that were shared. I think they have common themes, one of which is don't optimize against your monitoring methods. Just really don't do that. Actually measuring whether or not you're doing that and understanding whether two methods are similar enough that training against one is acceptable, training against another, and it won't sort of spill over to the next one. I think that's an open technical question that is quite interesting. A simple idea here is to just have methods that are very, very different to the methods that you're training against or could be training against that you have as holdout methods. And establishing what would be good holdout methods, making a stronger argument that you should hold these out. I think there isn't actually as much consensus there as maybe it would be nice to have. I think possibly a quite costly measure, but one that there might be a business case for, is just don't make big architectural shifts in your models as a function, like in ways that will reduce their monitorability or their auditability. Don't create a model that it will be hard to oversee. And then on the governance side, I think that I want to be very clear here that these are ideas. We're playing with them. I don't want to strongly propose them specifically, but I guess as stated, they may be somewhat innocuous anyway. But I think monitorability is like clearly very useful. One of the arguments I think that maybe doesn't get enough airtime is that like if it is useful to debug systems, so if chain of thought is useful for debugging systems, or the monitorability properties of models are useful for debugging them, then that's important for capabilities too. And we're not going to want to move to architectures where that's really costly. So I think making that argument more clearly might be a valuable thing to articulate. There are lots and lots of cheap approaches, I think, to maintaining monitorability, like just start measuring things might be a good example. So I'm excited about ideas in that direction. And also, to the extent that you can't always share everything entirely publicly, sharing as much as you can with groups like third-party auditors seems quite valuable. But we're going to publish a lot more of the kind of findings from the report. And I think there'll be subsequent projects thinking about these topics. So to recap, loss of monitorability would make alignment and control of future systems much more difficult. I think that's probably not too contentious. But if you think this is contentious, let's talk about it. My team at UK AISI is trying to form as clear a strategic picture of this as we can to enable our governance-adjacent technical work and to enable other governance-adjacent technical work. And I think that there's a lot of disagreement right now in the community. I was surprised how much disagreement there was. So my ask for you is do work that resolves cruxes. I don't think we need to disagree as much as we currently are. I think we can do work that resolves our disagreements. Thank you.